Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Sanjay Ikriar, for this opportunity. Uh, Keeping the broad theme of the conference in mind, I thought I'll just point out a few points, 4 or 5 points, on ethnic unrest in Asia, picking up some examples from China, India, Southeast Asia. You are aware that in 2012, there was this publication of a book called The Great Game East by Bertil Lintner. And this book premises on the notion that there is a new great game emerging or playing out in Asia with the ethnic issue as the key ingredients of this great power rivalry in the tri-junction of India, China, Myanmar. There is, I think, a view in Asia today that ethnic tensions are rising. Uh, the question is whether ethnic tensions are actually rising. I'll try to attempt to insert this question with five kind of points. Let me begin with the first point on the whole construct of two Asias. There is this idea that there are two Asias, developed Asia and an underdeveloped Asia, a maritime Asia and a continental Asia, and also a security Asia and an economic Asia. I think the ethnic issue fits in it or finds itself in all these constructs. You talk about developed Asia. There you find the ethnic issue has not disappeared. We still find, say for instance, in Malaysia, we still have ethnic issues. You talk underdeveloped inland, Asia, the inner Asia, ethnic issue is still a major challenge. Then talk about the maritime aspects. Again, the coastal region in most of the countries, and largely China, India, big countries, we have seen development in the past 2 decades, 3 decades, rapid development, economic development in the coastal regions. This has implications in the ethnic relations in the country. I mean, take China for instance. While the coastal region has developed, the people or ethnic groups in the coastal areas have benefited from there. You have not seen that in the western part of China. That has created some divide. So I think whether you talk about developed, underdeveloped, you talk about inner Asia or maritime Asia, or again you talk about security, economic Asia. Again, there also, economic, as I said, in developed countries also we are finding continuing ethnic issues still pursuing, creating problems in the polity. Then the security aspect. The earlier speakers talked about, the terrorist aspect, the extremist aspect, or even the fact that the linkages, the ethnic conflicts linking itself to the radical groups in the region as well as in the global stage. So in all this construct, I think the ethnic factor finds a place and therefore needs to be discussed and contextualized in understanding Asia today. With this background, let me just point out or elaborate some of the ideas that I've just listed out. The past decades have seen enormous economic growth in several countries in Asia. Now several governments have taken that advantage and also used that to as a unifying factor, giving developing or sharing that fruits of economic growth for the various ethnic groups in the country. But this has its own flip side. When the economy squeezes or it slows down, the government then adopts some preferential treatments for certain groups at the cost of other. I mean, I think Malaysia is a classic case here. When the majority Malays and the minority Chinese or Indians, I think that we have seen that playing out in Malaysia. The other is as Asian states accumulate wealth, they have also been going out to neighboring countries and beyond to invest in big major projects. Take, for instance, India and China. India and China, they've been going out and investing in major projects with two objectives. One is to resolve some of the ethnic issues, as the speakers mentioned, by taking advantage of the economic growth, they're developing, regions, the interior regions, frontier regions, with the hope that development would would resolve some of the ethnic issues in their frontier regions. Uh, Also, I think the other objective is to, with the interest that, once the economy, the ethnic issues are resolved, then these China, India, they can move beyond their borders to invest, to take, for economic interests. So I think that is playing out in that region. The other is also, it is also creating, some complex in local conflict dynamics, such as in Myanmar or in India. The huge investment of Chinese in Myanmar, in Upper Myanmar, is creating some, problems for the conflict dynamics in that region. For instance, an ethnic group is concerned about, the huge social and environmental impacts of the Chinese investment in that region. So it's creating or complicating the ethnic dynamics or ethnic conflicts there in that region. Then I think another factor that I think is also that we can see is the role of political transitions. I think what we are seeing today in Myanmar or in Nepal is that political transitions itself is also becoming a trigger for ethnic conflict. Now, as nations transit to a more democratic system, there are more democratic space that has been created, and people are now voicing, the suppressed voices are emerging today and demanding for their rights. And this is creating some kind of ethnic tension. You take the Madhesi case in Nepal or the Rohingyas in Myanmar. So that is, again, I think, I see that again is triggering some form of new ethnic conflict in the region. Then the other factor, I think, is technology. The previous section of will discuss it. Technology, again, the spread and the speed and spread at which technology has empowered these small groups, these ethnic groups, again, is also creating, the dimensions of this ethnic conflict is becoming difficult to manage. Now, so what is happening is a localized, ethnic issue is now becoming a regional or a global issue. So this is increasingly becoming or redefining ethnic conflicts in Asia. I think one last point I think I want to mention is the change in nature of frontiers. I mentioned about, the frontiers in China. What we are seeing is that because of the economic development, we are seeing new economic and political centers emerging in the frontier areas. Now, therefore, suddenly ethnic groups who were far away from, political and economic centers in their own country, suddenly today finds, in a new political center or economic center next door. I mean, take for instance again the ethnic groups in Myanmar. They suddenly find that there is a booming economic centers in southwestern provinces in China. So there, that equation, again, that creates, I think, problems at two levels. One is because now the ethnic groups in the frontier regions, now therefore they see or they aspire, they compare themselves with the people on the other side of the border. That creates, then they try to, and they ask for the same facilities, the same, provisions. That creates problem in their own country. I think that is another factor that we're seeing. The other, I think, is that because of the narrowing of, the distance from the political and economic centers, these ethnic groups are today redefining their own position in their own country. I think this again is also creating some sense of being different from their own territorial sovereignty questions. Let me just ask this question and or conclude my presentation. I think unless we understand some of these 4 or 5 issues while examining the ethnic conflicts in Asia, it would be difficult for us to understand which direction ethnic conflicts are moving ahead. Thank you.